Okay, so I just got done watching the Thunderbolt Fantasy movie, Bewitching Melody of the West, and I'm very happy. I'm going to be attempting to pronounce people's names, the characters' names in the story. I have kind of avoided it in the past when I've talked about Thunderbolt Fantasy in my videos because I'm always afraid I'm gonna, massacre the pronunciation of something. And, yeah, no more of that. I'm going to try my best. So, but I am going to have to look at my notes because these names, I'm like, I know I can see it in my head how they were spelled in the subtitles and anglicized in English. But then if I go and just try and read it the way you would in English, it's not going to sound the way the characters are saying each other's names. So I have to look at the pronunciation too. So Thunderbolt Fantasy, for those of you who don't know, is a collaboration between, I think it's Pili International, or is it Pili? International Media, Nitro Plus, and Good Smile Company. And it's airing on Crunchyroll, at least here in the United States it is. I'm not actually sure. I could actually check that real quick, whether or not it's airing in other countries. Let's see here. It looks like... I can't actually tell, but apparently they have subtitles in English and then in German on Crunchyroll, so maybe that will help you a little bit. The audio is in Japanese, so it's not going to be like some of the other, I don't know if I'm saying it right, Pili media, like on Netflix that they have here in the States, that is an amazing other story. But Thunderbolt Fantasy has become a favorite of mine. I first started watching it when I was still an undergraduate off at college, living at dorm. And I was in a lot of pain back then because it was before I had my latest surgery. Still in pain sometimes, but not like that. And I even sometimes had my wireless Bluetooth headphones on, being like, I'm gonna watch this in the dorm common room and stuff, on my laptop, laying down on this antique couch, because I went to a really old, I had a very nice package to be able to be sponsored to go to a very old historic women's college here in the United States. And so I'm chilling in a dorm common room from 1917 with my laptop propped up on this antique furniture, laying down watching this wuxia puppet show, basically. And I really enjoyed it a lot because I like that. I don't know if I'm saying that right either, so please forgive me if I'm not. I like that genre a lot, and you don't always see a lot of it here in the States. It's getting better because there's more international marketing kind of just coming over here. But yeah, so Thunderbolt Fantasy, this is the second movie. The first one was really more the first movie Thunderbolt Fantasy had, I talked about in another video. It was really more like a recap of the first season because it came out between the first and the second season. So the first half of that first movie was a recap of the first season. The second half was about our wandering hero. Oh no, excuse me, it wasn't about our wandering hero. It was about, I'm just getting confused with this one. It's about the Phoenix and how he came to be involved with one of the characters that is incredibly troublesome, and you'll know who I mean if you ever watch this show because he's a trickster. Anyway, so this movie is really more about the Bard, and I'm going to attempt to say his name, and again, if I mispronounce it, I'm sorry, but I think it's Lofuyo. I'm just calling him Bard Boy affectionately. It's about his whole his life, and how he ends up with oh my gosh, what is his name? Is hard to pronounce too. Shofu Khan. He ends up with Shofu Khan, and how they end up meeting up. Basically, this is a prequel to the first season. How they meet up and end up becoming part of this whole collecting the sorceress swords, and how the index of the sorceress swords came to be, and all of that. And I don't really feel like that's a spoiler, but if it is, I'm sorry. Because I'm guessing that if you're watching this video, you probably know what Thunderbolt Fantasy is and have therefore seen the first season. If not, it's not too bad of a spoiler. Because they gotta meet up sometime, right, in the story. So it's really interesting because I'm gonna have to keep looking. I feel so bad. I'm just gonna call him Bard Boy. I'm gonna give up because it was Lofuyo. Anyway, so Lofuyo ends up, or is it Lofuyo? ends up going and having like this really terrible childhood. And I don't want to spoil it too much, but just know that this movie basically covers like his awful childhood in the beginning, which honestly was pretty hard to watch and made it very understandable as to, I always was curious, okay, why is this bard so quiet? You know, he has this enchanted instrument that he can use as a weapon, which is badass, by the way. And you know, how did that all come to be? And this movie answers those questions. It answers how his instrument became enchanted, and how he ended up deciding to join that party and become part of what he felt was the group that was doing justifiable work, like good in the world, versus being part of the government but being terrible and stuff like that. So this is pretty interesting. His childhood does leave him, he's very isolated, I will say that, during his childhood, and he is abused, so that's why he's so quiet. Aside from the fact that I think honestly he's just so often taking in a lot of sensory input that I don't always feel like he as a character maybe has like the I don't want to say capacity, but it's almost like he doesn't have the, first of all, he doesn't have a lot of social skills, first of all, and secondly he like just doesn't, I think he gets overwhelmed sometimes, especially I think early on in the story when he becomes exposed to the outside world. I won't say how that happens, and it ends up kind of, I think it's jarring for him because he's very trusting, he's very naive, as you would expect him to be, because he's been growing up in isolation and the only other person he knew was his mom. And I think that it just really made me happy. It was sad, but it made me happy because it helped me understand him more as a character by watching this movie. So if you had any questions about Bard Boy, they're answered in this movie. I don't really want to go into it more than that because I feel like it would be too spoilery, and I really want you to go watch it because it is a beautiful piece of art. I will say that some of the songs are going to play a lot over and over again. He's going to sing a lot over and over again. At first, like in the middle of that whole thing before it finally stopped, I found it a little bit, I want to say like annoying, but I was thinking to myself, why is it that they keep doing this? I know that they only have a few songs, but I also was just kind of like, thinking, why are they doing this? And it's really, I think, for me, I interpret it as, yes, they use the same songs over and over again. Yes, it's a practical thing to do, but I also felt like if you listen to it with, like, from a musicality kind of, I can't words today, a musical perspective, you'll notice that as he sings it over and over and over again, that there are subtle changes each time he sings it, whether it's his pitch or different things. And I don't think I was imagining that. I think that's a thing that really happened, not just when he was a child, but as he grew older. And I think that you can feel the change of his character through how he executes those notes, like how he hits those notes when he's singing each time. So at least that's what I felt from it. So if my ears did not deceive me, which I don't think they did, that was a really, really nice touch. And I did like that a lot. So, yeah. Sorry, there's something on my desk. I'm like, whoa. So it's been good to watch. It was a real treat this morning to wake up and Crunchyroll having a banner being like, hey, so this is uploaded. And I'm like, what? And it looks like it maybe was uploaded a few days ago and I somehow didn't know, which is really bothering me. Because again, I love Thunderbolt Fantasy. And good news for all of us Thunderbolt Fantasy fans. It isn't just kind of, I don't want to jinx it, but it's pretty obvious that they're gonna do a third season at the end of this. And I was so happy by how they introduced that as a possibility. I really think that Thunderbolt Fantasy and a lot of, again, I don't know if I'm saying their company's name right, and I felt really bad. Pili or I don't know if it's Pili or Pili or, but anyway, their company and all of the people from Nitro Plus, a Good Smile company, who put in the money and the time and the talent to work on this show and other ones like it. I really appreciate it wholeheartedly from an artistic perspective, because there's really, I've said this before in other videos covering Thunderbolt Fantasy, there is nothing else like this out there right now. And to have people who are committed to preserving a style of art, or in this case like puppetry and props, and how you do all of this. Like, I just, like, when I watch the fight scenes, or just when I watch like moments where there's silence and the character's just there and they're, you know, they're thinking about things, or just like the mannerisms that they use in order to communicate the personality and current emotions of a character, given that that character's mouth doesn't move. All these things are just so beautiful. And they're beautiful not only in that they're an older technique, it's actually really ancient, but that they're like bringing it forward into the 21st century and fusing it with good-looking CG effects and making beautiful choreographed fight scenes and different things like that. It just brings me so much joy to watch that, and I appreciate it. Again, like I've said in other videos covering this, if you are like me and you like things that attempt to preserve an art form, or are attempting to bring that art form forward while preserving its tradition as best it can, things like that, like in media, you should probably give this kind of show a chance, especially if you have enjoyed things that are Jim Henson. And I'm talking like, you know, like Dark Crystal kind of Jim Henson. Because I just, again, I hate to like repeat myself, because I know I've said this in other videos, but I have watched movies and TV shows, because I was born in 1989, okay, that were on the tail end of a lot of that, you know, kind of like animatronic and puppet type stuff that was popular in the 80s, right? So this kind of thing, even though this is entirely a different art style and technique, is precious to me, because it not only harkens back to my childhood before CG was as much of a thing, and I'm not saying that CG isn't good, I'm just saying that I like a lot of different art forms, okay? And that brings me happiness, so it has a nostalgia factor for me, but it also has this, like, wow, they put in the time to do this, you know, to like keep the character's hair in place, to put the appropriate, you know, like clothing on them, to make the clothing on them, to make the props, to set them up, to get the atmosphere, to use different things. It just, it's awesome. It's really awesome. And I really hope that puppetry does not become a lost art form ever. I don't care what tradition it is, because there's so many of them around the world. I love puppetry, and I love stuff like that. So it's kind of like when you watch something that is stop motion animation, right? So if you watch the movie Coraline, you know that everything in there is handmade, right? It's that kind of wonder. It is. It's wonder. It's awe-inspiring when you watch something like that. And I definitely know that Thunderbolt Fantasy is not Coraline. I really, really, I don't know, just my heart like overflows with joy when I get to see people work on something that turns out to be so interesting to watch, and beautiful to watch. And I know I've said that a lot, but it is to me. It's beautiful to watch. And just have characters that you end up really growing to care for. At least I did. Yeah. I'm excited for season 3. You can tell I'm excited in general. So I really enjoyed this movie. If you are interested in Thunderbolt Fantasy, but you maybe don't want to go directly for the movie, if you want to, you can watch the first season in its entirety, or you can sit and grin and bear it through the awkward, horrific comedy that is not typical of the first season at all in the movie. That's the first movie that recaps the first season for you, but I'm warning you, the comedy is not... It was painful for me to watch, but it will recap the first season for you. In the second half, it'll have like a side story that's special about one of the characters. Okay, 2 of them. But yeah, and that will help you skip towards season 2. And you know, there's somebody from season 2 that's in this movie. And when I saw him, I'm like, damn it, not this guy again. Because he is that quintessential character that you just love to hate. And also, he's another really great example of what happens when you put in effort and have amazing layers of artistic talent go into creating this presence on the screen that just irritates you. Just the moment you see him, you go, oh, not that guy. So yeah, he's not as insufferable as he is in the second season in this movie, but you get the inklings of it. So, yes. That's all I wanted to say about Thunderbolt Fantasy's new movie that came out, and it's gonna be a new year here soon, the end of the decade. So I hope that it's been a good one for you. If it hasn't been, I know that mine has had its own share of victories and setbacks, which is fairly typical in life. I hope that next decade is better for us all, perhaps. And I'm pretty sure I might be updating before the new year, but just in case I don't, I live in Las Vegas, so New Year's is kind of intense around here, even if you don't live near the Strip. So, in other words, stay inside, because it get crazy. So take care, everyone, as you're able. This is Kelly with Eclectic Entries, and I'm going to be signing off for now. Hopefully I'll have some updates here soon, maybe about a book. I've been reading a few books lately on the supernatural side of things, and So until then, bye-bye.